Good day, subscribers. Thank you so much for joining me. Today I am Jeremy. This is the Financial Education Channel, and today we're talking about buying a house versus renting a house or renting an apartment, guys. We're going to talk about all the different factors on when it makes sense sometimes to rent. It honestly does, and sometimes it makes sense just to buy and get that whole deal out of the way, guys. So I'll run through some scenarios with you guys today, and I hope you enjoy this video on renting versus buying a house, guys. Hit a thumbs up if you do. Let's get into this. So number one, renting an apartment or a house, it makes sense if there's any shot that you might move soon, meaning if you might move out of state specifically or move in general, even if it's within your state. If there's any type of possibility, realistic possibility that you could be moving, you don't want to buy a house. Reason being is sometimes you'll end up buying a house, and then what happens is you have to end up selling the house at a loss many times, unless it happens to be a hot real estate market and somehow the 6 months or year or 2 years you lived there, the market went up somehow. Then maybe you can make a profit out of it or maybe break even, but many times that's hard. I've seen many times, I work in the real estate industry because I have a real estate marketing company, so I get to see sometimes clients that will buy a house and then all of a sudden they're moving out of state with their job a year later and they have to take a $10,000, $20,000 loss on that house, guys, especially if it's a new house, because new homes that are built don't really have a resale market because they're new, for crying out loud. So they end up having to take a loss on that, guy. So if there's any realistic possibility of moving, just rent for the time being. And then once you get figured out that, yeah, I'm definitely more than likely going to stay where I'm at, then you can go ahead and worry about buying, guys. So that is number one key on if you want to rent. Number two, renting an apartment or a house makes sense if the real estate market is super hot. If it's a super hot real estate market and prices just skyrocketing, going left and right, might make sense just to rent it out at that time and hopefully wait for the market to drop a bit or at least stabilize where it's not such a hot market, guys. I've seen many times where people jumped in the real estate market when it was super hot, especially, the states I've lived in, well, two of the states I've lived in, one being Arizona, one being here in Nevada. I've seen the real estate market be high flying. People got in 2005, 2006, 2007, and they lost all their equity of their home, basically, after the recession. And many of them who actually stayed in those homes still have not even made it back to where that house value was at originally, guys. That's how bad it got. And those two states aren't the only two states. Every state suffered. Pretty much every state out there suffered during the recession, and housing prices fell extreme amounts. Florida's another huge one. A lot of parts of Texas, same thing, guys. So you don't want to just go out there and run out and get a house just because you see it's high flying and it's a hot market, because sometimes you could end up getting burned very bad, guys, and end up losing all your equity in that home, whatever you made for payments and whatnot, and then you might just end up walking away from the home or something. That's a really sad situation, guys. So if it's a really hot real estate market, you might just want to stay away. Number three here, guys, buying a house makes sense if you're planning to live there at least 5 years plus. But think about realistic possibilities that could happen. Are you thinking about maybe having kids if you're with a significant other? Maybe you already have a kid or two, or is there a possibility you might have another one and need an extra bedroom? Or you may be starting a business and you might need to use an extra bedroom as an office. All those kinds of things, guys. Think about how safe is your job. If you work for a company currently, how safe is that job? Is it a company that's kind of struggling right now and there's a chance you might be laid off or something? Then you might want to stick to a place that's as small as possible, just in case that layoff does happen and you get stuck in that situation where you don't want to end up walking away from your home or something. So buying a house makes sense if you have your situation kind of figured out for the next 5 years and you've really thought it through. Well, what if this happens? What if this happens? Thinking about all the realistic possibilities. Obviously, freak things can come out of nowhere and happen, but think about the realistic possibilities, calculate those in your head and say, yeah, maybe it is worth staying here, in those kinds of things, guys. So that's a situation where buying a house makes sense. Number four, buying a house makes sense if the not the stock market. I talk stock market so much on this channel, I start talking stock market. If the housing market, buying a house makes sense if the housing market is super soft. If it's a super soft housing market, guys, it really makes sense to go out there and buy a house. Sometimes it makes sense even if there's a possibility of you moving in that amount of time, or maybe you need to sell, after a couple of years. Sometimes it just makes sense to, if the market's super soft, guys, to go out there and buy. The reason being is that's a perfect opportunity. It's no different than, say, the stock market, falls a ton. It makes sense to start buying stocks. With the housing, especially here in Nevada, people that were buying in 2010, 2011, 2012, those people are up huge amounts of money on their homes. Their homes are generally valued tens of thousands of dollars more than what they bought. Some of them even hundreds of thousands of dollars more than what they bought at, guys. So if you ever come across a situation where the housing market is super soft and prices have fallen dramatically and those kinds of things, guys, that is a golden opportunity to go out there and purchase houses, guys, because it's honestly no different than the stock market, like I preach on this channel, guys. When things drop drastically, it makes sense to buy at that point, guys, when everybody else is getting out. Next one up here, guys. Number 5, buying makes sense if rental inventory is super low and the mortgage you can get on a house is less money than what you could get for rent. So I was in a situation like this when I lived down Charlotte, North Carolina, where we were actually paying a rent more expensive than most mortgages around the area we were in. Now, we didn't buy at that time because we knew we were going to move very soon, so there was no point in buying a place and then moving. But if I would have stayed there, I actually would have bought ASAP. Because why the heck would you rent a place that's not even yours, as long as you can get the home loan and whatnot? Why would you rent a place if the rent is more money than what an actual mortgage payment would be on that house? Especially if it's $200, $300, $400 difference, guys. At that point, it makes sense just to buy. And sometimes that happens, guys. Rental inventory is just real low in an area. In Charlotte, it was a very fast expanding city. And a lot of people just came out like I did to rent because they didn't know if they were staying there for long. They didn't know the city very well. They didn't know where they want to live. You don't just want to move to a random state clear across the country, and you don't even know where you want to buy a house and those kinds of things and make that type of financial obligation. So a lot of people just rent, guys. That's what happens sometimes. So if you're in that situation, it probably just makes sense to buy. Now, some tips for you guys if you are planning on buying or renting and those kinds of things, guys. I got some great tips here for you. So one is, don't put a huge down payment on a home. Don't put a 40, 50, 60% down payment on a home, guys. That makes no sense. Take out the mortgage. The rates are so insanely low to get a mortgage. It's unbelievable, guys. The other big factor is if you ever come across a hairy financial situation, maybe the housing market drops drastically, you can always walk away from that house a lot easier than if you put a huge down payment on it. Because if you put a huge down payment on it, you don't want to walk away from that home at that point. If you got a 40, 50, 60% down payment on that house, guys. So whenever you go to buy a house, you want to put as little money down as possible. And then if you want to down the road, if a year from now, 2 years from now, if you want to make a huge lump sum payment of say $30,000 toward the loan to, bring that off, you can do that at that point. You don't need to do it right that day you sign the papers and whatnot and get that home. So that's kind of like an old school philosophy. Oh, make a big down payment on your home. No, you can always make that huge payment a year from now, 2 years from now. You don't need to rush into it, guys. And especially, imagine people that rushed into it, before the recession, 2005, 2006, 2007, and those super hot real estate markets. Imagine the people that put huge down payments and they saw the value of their house drop 50%. Imagine how bad those people felt. Maybe you're one of them. I hope you're not watching this, but it's real, guys, and it's something that happens. So don't rush out there and put a huge down payment on a home. Don't rent a place if it's more than 25% of your income. If the rent's more than 25% of your income, you're probably renting a place that's too expensive. You don't want to part with that much money when you're talking about renting a place, guys. The main reason is because you want to be able to save money, invest money, and you want to be able to buy a house at some point in time, right? Or a condo or whatever. You want to buy something of your own so you don't have to rent for the rest of your life. So don't rent a place that's more than 25% of your income, bottom line. And the last tip I have for you guys, try not to rent if you have pets. If you have pets, renting is a bad idea, especially in an apartment community, because, and some people think it's a good idea, but it's really a bad, because one, the place could get tore up. You're probably never going to get your cleaning deposit back if you have pets. You have extra fees you have to pay if you have pets, like a $250 fee per pet. Those kinds of things, guys, chances of the pet tearing something up and getting charged for that, it's a lot higher. You have neighbors that complain about the pets. It always happens, guys. I've lived in plenty of apartment communities throughout my adult life as soon as I moved out of my parents and whatnot. And I've had neighbors that someone complained about their dog and they were telling me about it. Yeah, this person complained about my dog and now I got to put this shock collar on it or whatever, guys. So try not to rent if you have pets. I mean, just at least rent a home if that's really necessary, but try to buy a home if you have dogs and cats and birds and all those kinds of things, because it's just going to be one big huge headache for you as a pet owner, basically. So I hope you guys enjoyed this today. If you're thinking about renting, thinking about buying, at least hopefully you have some good information out there now that you can kind of think about to yourself. Thank you so much for watching, guys. If you just came across this channel and you're not subscribed yet, you may want to. We talk personal finance on the channel like we did today. We talk entrepreneurship. I'm an actual business owner. I give away so many of my business tips. We talk about the stock market, how to make your money into money more than anything on this channel. Thank you for watching, guys, and have a great day.